Hey everybody, what's up? Mr. Cornell here. Going to be going over some lessons on doing systems of equations for word problems. Pretty basic stuff. I'm not going to do this by hand. It's going to be all calculator work. So if you know how to do it in the calculator, do a couple with me, then try a couple on your own, or hit pause, practice with the calculator. If you're not sure how to use the calculator, then you can go back to the last video, check it out on how to solve systems of equations with the calculator. Any background noise, I got 3 kids sitting here doing some coloring, some artwork, so just ignore those guys right there. Alright, so here we go. So question number 1 talks about 2 friends who went to a restaurant and ordered 1 plain pizza and 2 sodas. Their bill totaled $15.95. Later that day, 5 friends went to the same restaurant. They ordered 3 plain pizzas and each person had 1 soda. Their bill totaled $45.90. Write and solve a system of equations to determine the price of 1 plain pizza and 1 soda. So for this question, there are two variables or 2 unknowns. One of those variables is the price of 1 plain pizza and the price of 1 soda. So when you go through this, you want to assign them each their own variable. So if we call the pizza X and we call the soda Y, if I go back and read it again, it says 2 friends went to a restaurant and ordered 1 plain pizza and 2 sodas, and their total was $15.95. Later that day, 5 friends went to the same restaurant and ordered 3 plain pizzas, and each person had 1 soda. And we know that there were 5 friends, so I would call this one 5Y, because there are 5 sodas. And then that totaled $45.90. So from what we're doing, we have 2 equations. Okay, so the first equation would say that 1 pizza times its cost plus 2 sodas times its cost is going to total $15.95. So that's where our first equation comes from. Then for the second one, for when the 5 friends went, they ordered 3 pizzas, they ordered 5 sodas, and that came to $45.90. So right here we have our system of equations. From here, if you do it by hand, you can solve this by hand, or you can create a matrix and put it right into your calculator. And again, go back to the last video because we did all of those questions there. My matrix would be 1, 2, 1595, 3, 5, 4590. So then you go ahead, throw that into your calculator, and then that's going to give us 1, 0, 12.05, and 0, 1, 1.95. And what that's telling me is that 1 plain pizza is going to be $12.05, and 1 single soda is $1.95. And there you go. That's how you're going to do these questions. Okay, so these are all pretty straightforward questions. It's going to tell you 3 and 2 in total, or whatever the case is. Okay. So number 2. The cost of 3 markers and 2 pencils is $1.80. The cost of 4 markers and 6 pencils is $2.90. What is the cost of each item? So that would include the cost of a marker, which I can call X, and a pencil, which I can call Y. And then if I looked at this one. So now there are 2 totals, and that's what's going to give me my 2 equations. One of those totals was $1.80. And it was $1.80 for 3 markers and 2 pencils. And for the other, the equation had a total of $2.90, and that was for 4 markers and 6 pencils. From here now we can create a matrix. 3, 2, 180, 4, 6, and $2.90. I would go ahead, throw that into my calculator, and get 0.50, or it says 0.5, and 0, 1, and 0.15, which means the cost of a marker is 50 cents, and the cost of a pencil is 15 cents. Alright, so now would be a good time to maybe give the video a pause, try to do question number 3, see if you have it down, and if you did, then we're going to go to some similar questions, but a little bit different in the way they word it. So the cost of 3 notebooks and 4 pencils is $8.50, and the cost of 5 notebooks and 8 pencils is $14.50. Determine the cost of 1 notebook and the cost of 1 pencil. So the first sentence tells me that 3 notebooks and 4 pencils is $8.50. The cost of 5 notebooks and 8 pencils is $14.50. So right there I have my two equations. 3, 4, 8.50, 5, 8, and 14.50. Throw that into my calculator, and what I'm going to get is that the cost of a notebook was $2.50, and it said 2.5, and the cost of a pencil was $1.25. And hopefully you got that answer there. If you ever are using your calculator and it doesn't really come up in that form when you're trying to do this, and it's not one of those weird ones where it's an infill in or no solution, it's probably because something got messed up in your matrix. So always go back and double check your calculator to make sure that you have the right numbers. Alright, so now let's look at 2 more questions that they just kind of word a little bit differently, but in the end it's kind of the same process. So it says an animal shelter spends $2.35 to care for each cat, $5.50 per day to care for each dog. Pat noticed that a shelter spent $89.50 to care for cats and dogs on Wednesday. Write an equation to represent the possible number of cats and dogs that could have been at the shelter on Wednesday. So if you read without trying to think of all of the other questions that we've done so far, they're only giving us one total, but they're still giving us 2 variables, and that would be the cost to have a cat there and the cost to have a dog there. More of a dog person myself, if I had to pick. Alright, now, Pat said that there might be 8 cats and 14 dogs at the animal shelter on Wednesday. Are Pat's numbers possible? So if you think about it, cats is 8, dogs are 14. So I could take these numbers here and just substitute them right into my equation. So it would look like 2.35 times 8 plus 5.50 times 14, and that should equal 89.50. Go ahead, throw this into my calculator, and I'm going to have something around $95.80. Well, that is not equal to $89.50, so this was not possible. Alright, so now let's figure out how to figure out how many cats and dogs were there that day without sitting there trying to substitute 7 and 15 or 7 and 12 to try to make 89.50. So later Pat found out that there were a total of 22 cats and dogs at the shelter on Wednesday. So think about how that's another total, right? So that means that could have another equation. And where did they get the 22 from? Well, they walked around and they counted how many cats and how many dogs. So they took the number of cats, which we don't know, and added it to the number of dogs, which we don't know, and that's where they get 22 from. Okay, so that could be any combination. It could have been 11 and 11. It could have been 10 and 12. We don't know what it is. I just know that they added the number of cats, they added the number of dogs, and set it equal to 22. Now, if I take the other equation that I just created, which is now the cost, 2.35 plus 5.50, that's going to give me 89.50. So now I just created a system of equations with 2 variables with 2 equations. So I can go to my calculator and do 1, 1, 22. This represents how many animals there are at the shelter. 2.35, 5.50, 89.50, and then this represents how much money I got from having those animals in there. Go ahead, throw that, God bless you, into your calculator, and you are going to figure out that there were 10 cats and 12 dogs. You can always check that by throwing that into your calculator up here, doing 10 and 12, and it's going to give you the correct 89.50. Okay? Alright, so let's look at a similar question to that. So the Celluloid Cinema sold 150 tickets to a movie. Some of them were child's tickets, okay, call them X, and the rest were adult tickets, we'll call them Y. A child's ticket cost $7.75, and an adult ticket cost $10.25. If the cinema sold $1,470 worth of tickets. Determine how many child and how many adult tickets were sold. Okay? So when I go through this, again, there are two totals. One of those totals was 150, and that shows the number of tickets that were sold. And then the other was 1,470, and that's how much money I made. Okay? So the tickets, well, what kind of tickets are there? There were child's tickets, children, and then there were adult tickets. So it's just X and Y, okay? One X, one Y, and if you add up the X's and the Y's, which I don't know, it's going to give me 150. Now, how much did that one ticket cost? And then that one ticket was 7.75. Shirley, please stop. And then the cost of the child's ticket was 10.25. And there you go. We just set up our system. 1, 1, and 150 represents the number of tickets. 775, 1025, 1470 represents the amount of money. And then you can go ahead and throw that into your calculator, and it's going to tell you that we sold 27 children's tickets and 123 adult tickets. All right? And last question. Okay, so again, try to give the video a pause, try it yourself. So Alicia purchased half gallons of ice cream for $3.50. Okay, so they're saying H, they want this to be H, and packages of ice cream cones for $2.50, and they want that to be P. She purchased 14 items and spent $43. Which system of equations can be used to determine how much she sold? All right, so let's create a system. We have two totals. One is 14, that represents the number, and one is 43, and that represents how much money I spent. So the number of what? It's the number of half gallons of ice cream and the number of packages of ice cream cones. And then 43 was from purchasing, what is it? $3.50 for half gallons of ice cream and $2.50 worth of packages. And there you go. 1, 1, 14, 350, 250, 43, and there you go there. Throw that into your calculator. You're going to realize that she has 8 half gallons of ice cream and 6 packages of ice cream cones. All right. Now, hopefully this helped you. One trick that they could do, okay, because you might say, well, if they give me the total, it's always just going to be 1 and 1. Sometimes they could give you this exact same question, but they could say that they purchased twice as many packages of ice cream cones than half gallons of ice cream. So if you're doing that, okay, so just like a side note, I'm not even going to solve it, just want you to understand that. So say she did purchase 14 items, but they told you that she's purchased twice as many packages as ice cream, then when I do this, I'm going to have to do 1H and 2P, because they told me in the question, when they told me 14, again, just making this up, that they specifically ordered twice as many packages. So I'd have to kind of take that into account. And then the rest would stay the same, and you'd throw it into your matrix and get the answer. Alright, so hopefully this helped. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you hit that button.